Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to this lecture on VPC, which is called as Virtual Private Cloud. So this is one of the core networking services of AWS, and we are going to learn this in its entirety. And we are going to look at some complex networking configurations. So let's get started. So when it comes to what a VPC is, it is defined as a virtual private cloud, wherein Amazon allows you to provision a logically isolated section of the AWS cloud, wherein you can launch all of your resources in the virtual network that you define. So those resources can be EC2 instances, it can be database instances, it can also be Lambda functions, it can be your Docker clusters or your Kubernetes clusters. So all of these are your resources that could possibly run within the virtual private cloud, where you need to have some kind of networking and some kind of isolation wherein you can keep all of your resources private, or you can choose to have some of your resources as public, right? So you have complete control over your virtual networking environment. So you are in control of selecting your own IP address ranges. So we will be using the RFC 1918 range, which is the recommended private IP ranges. So we'll be using the 10 network series /8, or we'll be using the 172 series /12, or the 192 series /16, and so on. So these are some of the private IP ranges that we are going to be using. And we can also provision our own subnets within our network. So during the first class, we would have studied about what subnetting was, and we will recap that over here. And we can control the traffic through route tables. So if you want your traffic to go through the internet, and you want inbound and outbound traffic, you can provision your own internet gateway. Or if suppose you would like to ensure that all of your resources in your private subnet cannot be accessed from the internet, but still you would need outbound access for your private subnet instances to download some patches and do some updates and so on its operating system, you can use something called as a NAT gateway, which we will study a little bit later. So you can also use both IPv4 and IPv6 in your VPC. And while you create your VPC, you can choose your tenancy. And this tenancy is specified to as shared tenancy or dedicated tenancy. So if you're going to go with the dedicated tenancy, that means you can launch only dedicated resources or dedicated instances, right, within your VPC. But if you go with the default tenancy, wherein you can launch your normal virtual machines that you use, like on-demand instances like T2 micro, T3 micro, and so on, right? So let's go to the next section where we will discuss about some of the connectivity options. So when it comes to the connectivity options, you can directly connect to the internet using public subnets. So therefore, you can launch an EC2 instance into a subnet that is publicly available, right? Which can receive traffic from the internet through the internet gateway. So that is one kind of connectivity where you don't have private subnets. But then the second kind of connectivity is where you have both public subnets and private subnets, wherein all of your public subnet instances or your resources get direct access to the internet through the internet gateway, but your private subnet resources get access to the internet through a gateway called as a NAT gateway. So we will be studying more about this NAT gateway, and I'll mention some points while we study about this. There was also one legacy, probably not, I wouldn't say legacy, but still there was one solution that was there previously before using NAT gateway, which was called as a NAT instance, which was essentially an EC2 instance with the NAT AMI. So I'll show you that particular scenario also over here. But while using a NAT instance, you are responsible about managing the infrastructure of the NAT instance. So you have to take care about the scaling aspects of a NAT instance. You have to manage it entirely, and that was a huge headache. But when it came to NAT gateways, which was a highly available managed offering by AWS, you didn't have to manage anything other than the fact that you had to provide an elastic IP for the NAT gateway, right? So we will do both these scenarios in practical, and we will see as to how it works. So let's go to the next connectivity option. So you can also connect to your corporate data center. So all the traffic to and from your VPC can be routed to your corporate data center over the IPsec VPN connection. If you want dedicated, very low latency, fast speed 1 gigs or 10 gigs regarding connectivity, then you will have to go for an option called as direct connect. But other than that, if you want to set up a connection within 15 to 20 minutes or so on, then you can go for IPsec VPN connection to connect your on-premise data center to the AWS Cloud's VPC. Another connectivity option that people use a lot is we can peer VPCs. So if suppose I have one VPC or in one AWS account within one region, I can peer that VPC with another AWS accounts, another region. That is possible. So in fact, peering can be possible within the same account across regions. Peering is also possible across AWS accounts, across regions. So any kind of possibility is there. So you can peer your VPC with your accounts, another region VPC, or even in the same regions VPC, or you can peer your VPC with another accounts VPC in that same region as you have your source VPC, or in a different region also. So either way is possible. The other connectivity option is you can connect to AWS services securely without using an internet gateway or an ad gateway or a proxy firewall through a concept called as a VPC endpoint. So this is something that comes up in the exam more frequently, wherein if suppose you would like to access an internet related AWS service like S3 or DynamoDB or even API gateway for that matter, how would you go ahead and connect to these services from within the VPC from your private subnet without using the internet gateway or your NAT gateway, because your traffic should not go through the internet, right? So while you use something called as a VPC endpoint, you will be, creating a gateway endpoint or an interface endpoint. And using one of these endpoints, you will be able to directly connect to that respective internet related service like S3 or DynamoDB or even IAPA gateway for that matter through Amazon's backbone network. So wherein all of your traffic will be private in nature. So it will not go through the internet or through the NAT gateway. And finally, you can also connect to any SaaS solution which is supported by AWS Private Link. So when you use AWS Private Link, or it's also called as endpoint services on the console, you will have to provision an ENI with a network load balancer in order to go ahead and connect and use AWS Private Link. So we will talk about some of these options when we work with the practical demo, right? So now let's go into one of the security concepts of VPCs, wherein we have something called as a network access control list and something called as a security group. So while we studied about EC2, we would have for sure studied about security groups. So security groups are stateful firewalls that are associated with your EC2 instance or your database instance, or even it can be to a load balancer, right? So the security group acts on the ENI level or the Elastic Network Interface level. And this network access control list works on the subnet level. So that's also a firewall, but it's just that it's stateless in nature. So network access control list, you will have to specify the inbound traffic as well as the outbound traffic. But when it comes to security groups, you will have to specify only the inbound traffic. So automatically the outbound traffic is also allowed on that same port that you specify for the inbound traffic, because it's stateful in nature. You can deny IP addresses only with network access control list. You can't deny anything with your security group, because by default, all rules are denied. Whatever rules you provide are allowed. With network access control list, the rules that you specify are evaluated in rule order. So if you say that rule number 99 is deny all traffic and rule number 100 is allow all traffic, by default, everything will be denied, right? But when it comes to security groups, each and every rule is evaluated before the traffic is allowed, right? So that's something to remember for the exam. So a network access control list always resides on the subnet level, but your security groups reside on the ENI level. So you can attach a security group to an EC2 instance or to a database instance or a load balancer or a Lambda function that is running within the VPC and so on, right? So now let's look at what subnets are. So it's pretty simple to understand as to what a subnet is. It's the practice of dividing your bigger network into smaller networks. So while we do the practical demo, you'll get more clarity into what that is. So similarly, as to how you have private IPs and public IPs and so on, we also have the concept called as public subnet and private subnet. So a public subnet is something that has resources that can directly access the internet. And how do you denote something as a public subnet is by specifying a route to the internet, right? And when you don't have a route to the internet, that subnet by default becomes a private subnet. So route table is something that we can create. So the route table contains a set of rules. These are also called as routes that determines where the network traffic is going to be directed to, right? So while you create your VPC, you by default get a main routing table, right? But you can create your own custom routing table. And this main routing table that is created when you create a VPC, that main route table has only one rule within it, which is called as a local route, wherein which is being mentioned in the last line. So this local route is nothing but it mentions that all of your resources within the VPC can talk to each other, right? It's like an intranet kind of local route that has been mentioned on the main routing table when you create the VPC. But then you can go ahead and create your own custom routing tables, and you can also specify the route table association with a specific subnet, which determines whether that subnet is a public subnet or private subnet, depending on the rule to the internet or not, right? And you can also specify the target, which is that internet gateway, or it could be an ad gateway. And then you have to specify the destination, right? Which is your CIDR block address to where the traffic should go to, right? So one more concept regarding the VPC aspects, which we would have already seen when it comes to the EC2 aspects, is regarding elastic IP. So elastic IP is nothing but a static IPv4 that is designed for dynamic cloud computing, in the sense that if suppose you stop and start your resource and so on, your elastic IP remains through the life cycle of that particular resource, whether it be an EC2 instance or a Lambda function and so on. So you can assign elastic IPs to EC2 instances. So an elastic IP is a public IP which is reachable from the internet, and you would use this for some kind of a scenario wherein you would like to register that instance with a with a monitoring application, but then each and every time that you stop and start the instance, you don't want the IP address to change, right? So in those cases, you would assign something called as an elastic IP. So in networking terms, it's also called as a static IP, and therefore it stays throughout the life cycle of an EC2 instance, whether you stop and start your EC2 instance and so on. But always remember that elastic IPs are charged, and you have a limit of 5 elastic IPs in your free tier account. You have to talk to AWS support in order to increase that particular limit, right? So now when it comes to the internet gateway, it's a horizontally scaled, redundant, highly available VPC component that allows communication between your resources within the VPC to the internet. So there is no availability risk or any kind of bandwidth constraints on your network. So it serves two purposes. One is to provide a target for your VPC routes for internet routable traffic, and also to perform NAT for the instances that have been assigned public IPv4. So, and you can also go ahead and create an NAT gateway for your private subnet resources to talk to the internet. But the prerequisite of creating a NAT gateway is that the VPC should have an internet gateway already attached. Then only you'll be able to create a NAT gateway. Otherwise, it will result in an error, right? So let's look at the next concept called as a NAT gateway. So you can use a network address translation gateway to enable instances in your private subnet to connect to the internet or any AWS service, but it prevents people from the internet from initiating a connection back to those instances. So this NAT gateway contains an elastic IP that is being associated with it, and you're also charged for the NAT gateway on an hourly basis, right? So if suppose the traffic goes from the private subnet to the internet, it goes through the NAT gateway. So the NAT gateway translates that internal IP address to its own elastic IP and then sends the outbound traffic on a different port, right? So that's its behavior to do network address translation. So now, since we spoke about during the connectivity options, we spoke about something called as VPC peering. So VPC peering, establishes a connectivity between two VPCs that could be residing within the same region, within the same account, or in a different region in another AWS account. Either way is possible. So with VPC peering, there are some prerequisites that you will have to match. It's just that both the VPCs that you're peering should not have overlapping CIDR block addresses. So you can't have a VPC which has 10.0.0.0/16 and another VPC that has 10.0.0.0/24. Both are part of the same network. So VPC peering will not work, right? So in this particular use case, we have 10.0.network for the VPC A, and we have a 172.31 network for VPC B, right? And we have two instances over here that could talk to each other through private IP ranges. That is the beauty about this. They don't need to talk to each other using public IPv4 ranges. They can talk to themselves using private IP ranges itself, provided you have peered these VPCs. So what could be a good example for this is, if suppose you have your database instance in a separate VPC, it could be possible. So you would like all of your EC2 instances to talk to the database instance in another VPC, just to isolate the kind of security that you would like to have for your database servers, right? It's very much possible. So one thing to also note regarding VPC peering is that transitive peering is not supported, which means that if suppose you have VPC A, VPC B, and VPC C, and you would like to peer VPC A and B, and then you peer B and C, it does not imply that the traffic goes from A to C through B, right? It does not imply that. So the peering connection from A to C has to be established separately if you need to have some kind of peering between A to C. So a transitive peering is not supported, okay? And one more thing is that it helps you facilitate the transfer of data. So for example, you may have more than one AWS account, and you can peer VPCs across these accounts to create a file sharing network, very much possible. And you can establish peering relationships between VPCs across different AWS regions, also called as inter-region VPC peering. So this allows VPC resources like EC2 instances or databases or Lambda functions that run in different regions to communicate with each other using private IP ranges without requiring any kind of gateway or VPN connection or any kind of network appliance. So traffic always stays on the AWS backbone network and never traverses the public internet, which reduces some kind of threats or any kind of exploitation or any DDoS attacks, right? So this is the architecture that we will be doing today. So in this particular architecture, I would like to explain this before going forward with the demo. So in this particular architecture, you have an AWS region within which we have a VPC, right? And the VPC CIDR block address is 10.0.0.0/16, right? And then you have two availability zones. So you have availability zone A, and then you have an availability zone B, right? So with this availability zone A, where you have mapped a private subnet, you have 10.0.1.0/24. And then let's consider this to be the availability zone B, wherein we have the 10.0.0.0/24 public subnet that is being assigned to it, right? So the public subnet is 10.0.0.0/24 and the private subnet is 10.0.1.0/24. So in this public subnet, you have a web server that has not necessarily an elastic IP, but let's say for simplicity's sake, it has a public IP range and it also has a private IP, right? And this particular private subnet has another EC2 instance, which could possibly be thought of as a database server, but for demo purposes, we are not going to install a database on that and all. So what we are going to simply do is go ahead and launch another EC2 instance over here in the private subnet. And you can see that we don't have any kind of public IP associated with it. We only have private IP associated for instances within the private subnet, right? And then we are going to have two routing tables over here. So the public subnet is always going to be associated with the custom route table, and the private subnet is going to be assigned with the main routing table. So the public subnet, which is associated with the custom route table, has two targets over here, two rules, I would say. The first rule over here states that all traffic within the VPC is going to the local target, and any traffic that goes through the internet should go through the internet gateway, which is denoted by IGW-ID, right? So then we'll have to provision an internet gateway, and automatically all the traffic within the public subnet that needs to reach the internet will automatically go through this routing table, which will match that traffic and allow it to go through the internet gateway. But then what happens when it comes to the private subnet? So when it comes to the private subnet in the main routing table, we have a route that says 0.0.0.0/0 goes to the NAT gateway, right? So when we say that it goes through the NAT gateway, what happens is whenever a traffic is being sent to the internet from this private subnet, it's going to go to this router, to this particular routing table, and then it's going to find out the next hop, and it's going to find out the NAT gateway, which is going to be residing over here. And this NAT gateway has an elastic IP that is assigned to it, and it's going to use this elastic IP and a different port to go ahead and send out the traffic to the internet through the internet gateway, right? And now let's say, for example, when the return traffic comes back, now the NAT gateway is going to be stateful. It's going to maintain a NAT table wherein it's going to unnat your respective return traffic, and then go ahead and find out as to which respective private subnet resource has been sending out the traffic, and go back and send that response to your respective private subnet resource, right? So that's how the return traffic comes. But if suppose someone in the internet tries to go ahead and compromise any one of your resources within your private subnet, they will not be able to, because all they will see is the NAT gateway's elastic IP over there, but then they will not be able to, in fact, find out what is your private subnet resource respective traffic that has been, that is sitting in your private subnet, right? So that's why using a NAT gateway is a really good practice and one of the best practices. So anyone who goes ahead and completes this particular lab uh, can grasp VPC concepts really quickly, and it would be very useful for the exam, because you will have to remember most of these concepts going into the exam, as most of these concepts resolve around highly available scenarios and regarding VPCs and load balancers and so on, regarding auto scaling groups and so on. So let's go ahead and create this particular architecture right now. So I'm going to start off by creating the VPC. So let me go ahead and log into the console. So we are in the VPC console right now, and I am logged into my account, and I am sitting in the Northern Virginia region. And let me go ahead and create a VPC. So there are two ways to create a VPC. The first one is a pretty easy way to create a VPC using a launch VPC wizard. So this will either create a single public subnet VPC for you, or you can choose to create a public subnet and a private subnet. So all you have to do is select this template and then fill in these values, right? You have to just fill in these values, and it's going to go ahead and create things for you. But then you also have one more template, which is with public and private subnets with hardware VPN access. And then you have only private subnets with hardware VPN access, right? So instead of using these VPC wizards, what we are going to do is we are going to go ahead and create something by ourselves, which is going to be the long way and the hard way of doing things. So let's go to VPCs. So I'm going to go ahead and create a VPC. So I'm going to give it a name tag. So I'm calling it as my demo VPC. So I've given the CIDR block address as 10.0.0.0/16. And then I'm not going to go with any IPv6 CIDR block ranges, but then you can also go with Amazon's IPv6 CIDR block ranges. And like I mentioned at the start of this lab, the tenancy is default or dedicated. So if you leave it as dedicated, then you can launch only dedicated instances into this VPC. So I'm just going to leave it as default right now. I don't want to incur costs with dedicated. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on create. So once it has created the VPC for you, the easiest way to find out the difference between a default VPC of your AWS account and a VPC that you have created is that the VPC ID is much shorter when it comes to the default VPC that is assigned with this AWS account for every region, right? So therefore, without knowing the concepts of VPC itself, we were able to work with EC2 and so on, and we automatically got internet access and so on when we placed it within the VPC. That's because we already have a default VPC within our AWS account when we purchase the AWS account for each and every region. So now let's go ahead and just filter with this particular VPC that we have created, right? So the first thing that I would like to check over here is whether I have DNS host names enabled. So I don't have DNS host names enabled. It's in the disabled status. So I'm going to go ahead and enable DNS host names. So how do you do that? Click on your VPC, click on actions, click on DNS host names, and click on enable. It's a simple checkbox and click on save. So now since we have created our VPC, the next step what we have to do is go ahead and create our subnets. So I'm going to go ahead and click on subnets, and I'm going to go ahead and create a subnet. So I'm going to go ahead and click on create subnet. So I'm going to give this a name tag. I'm just going to call this as my public subnet. So my public subnet CIDR block address is going to be 10.0.0.0/24. I'm just going to place this because our VPC CIDR block was 10.0.0.0/16. So one more thing you have to remember when it comes to a subnet is AWS allows you to create subnets only between /16 and /28, which means /16 is the highest network range that you would get, and /28 is the lowest network range that you would get, right? But when it comes to IPv6, you can go with /64 CIDR block range. So I'm going to choose my VPC, which is my demo VPC NG, and then I'm going to choose the availability zone to be US East 1A, right? If you leave it as no preference, it automatically selects an availability zone for you, but I'm going to place it with US East 1A right now. So I'm going to go ahead and create this subnet. So similarly, I'm going to create one more subnet called as the private subnet. So I'm going to go ahead and give this the CIDR block range of 10.0.1.0/24, right? And for the VPC, I'm going to choose my VPC, and this time I'm going to choose US East 1B as my availability zone. So therefore, what we have right now is, once we have created this, what we have is we have a VPC that we have created, and then let's go ahead and filter based on that VPC over here and see. So let me copy the VPC ID and let me go to subnets. And let me just paste this over here. So you can see that we have two subnets over here. One public subnet with CIDR block 10.0.0.0/24, wherein we have only 251 available addresses. So what is the catch to this? So therefore, AWS reserves 5 IP addresses. They reserve the first IP address for the network. This we would have studied in the first class. They reserve the second IP address for the router, the third one for the DHCP server, and the fourth one for reserved purposes. And then the last one for your broadcast IP. So they reserve 5 IP addresses, right? So therefore, we don't get 2 power 8, which is 256. We get only 2 power 8 minus 5, which is 251. Okay. And we have spread these subnets across multiple availability zones. So we are leveraging high availability over here by spreading it across multiple availability zones. So what we are going to do next is, for our public subnets alone, there is one small modification that we have to do, because if suppose we launch one instance into the public subnet, we will not get public IP by default, because on the subnet level setting, it is set as no. So we'll change that to yes. So click on your subnet for your public subnet alone, click on actions, click on modify auto assign IP settings, and click on enable. So this will automatically assign public IP addresses if you place resources onto that public subnet, right? So the next thing that we can do over here is we can go ahead and configure our internet gateway. So let's go to internet gateways on the left side, and let's go ahead and create an internet gateway. So I'm calling it as my demo VPC NG ID IGW, which is, I mean, just a random name that I'm giving. So when you're working in an organization, always remember you have to give the right names for your resources. Let's go ahead and click on create. So always when an internet gateway is created, it will be in the detached state.
So you will have to go ahead and attach it to your VPC. The only catch over here is that only one VPC can have one internet gateway at any point of time, right? So if you can't go ahead and attach this particular internet gateway to any other VPC. So you can see over here already we have two internet gateways attached to two respective VPCs. Those two VPCs will not list over here. So only our VPC right now will list. So you can click on actions and click on attach to VPC. Therefore, you see only our VPC that does not have an internet gateway over here. Go ahead and click on attach. So since we have attached our internet gateway, next what we'll have to configure is our route tables. So let's go ahead and click on route tables, and let's go ahead and create two route tables for us. But then do we have to actually create two? No, right? Because we already have a route table that was created when our VPC was created, guys. That's our main route table. So let's copy the VPC ID. Let's go to route table and filter based on the VPC ID. You can see we already have one route table over here. Now this is called as a main route table. So to this respective route table, I'm going to associate my private subnet, and I'm going to go ahead and associate my public subnet to a new route table that I create, which is called as a custom route table. So I'm just going to give a name over here called as main route table. How do you identify this is a main route table? Obviously, man, it's given main as yes over here. So this is how you identify whether this is a main route table for your VPC or not. So let's go to subnet associations for our main route table, and let's associate my private subnet over here. So let's go ahead and click on private subnet, and let's click on save. So now you can see that this private subnet does not have any route to the internet gateway. It only has the local route, which means all the resources within the VPC can talk to each other, but obviously not to the internet, right? So now let's go ahead and create our own route table called as a custom route table. So I'm calling it as my custom route table. And then the VPC I'm going to choose is my VPC, my demo VPC NG. I'm going to click on create. So now you can see over here, we have our custom route table, but we don't have any explicit subnet associations with this guy. So let us go ahead and click on our custom route table and click on subnet associations and associate the public subnet. So even over here, and subnet can be associated with only one route table at any point of time. That condition is there. And obviously, since this is a custom route table, the main flag is set to no. So now to this custom route table, because we have our public subnet associated over here, we have to specify a route to the internet gateway. So let's click on edit routes. Let's add a route. So this is going to be 0.0.0.0/0, which is the internet. And the target is going to be the internet gateway. And we are going to choose our internet gateway and click on save. Now we are actually wrapped up with our VPC configurations. All we have to do is now launch instances into this VPC, and let's connect to those instances, and let's see if whatever we see is correct. Whatever we did was perfectly working fine. So let's go to instances. So let's open EC2 in a new tab. Now let's go to running instances, right? So now let's go ahead and click on launch instance. So we are in the Northern Virginia region. I'm going to use my favorite Amazon Linux AMI, and I'm going to click on select. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the T2 micro. Click on configure instance details. So now this is where I'm going to choose my VPC, guys. So I'm going to choose my VPC NG over here, and then I'm going to choose my public subnet. And you can see automatically the subnet setting for auto assign IP address was enabled because we modified it on the subnet level, right? If you choose the private subnet, it will change to disabled. Please watch carefully. It will change to disabled because you will not get a public IP when you launch resources into the private subnet. So we can choose public subnet and choose enable by default. So let me go ahead and click on add storage. So I'm going to leave this 8 gigs as it is. Click on add tags. I'm just going to call this as I'm going to call it as my public subnet web server. I'm going to configure security groups. And you can see over here, if I click on select existing security group, I don't have any of my previously created security groups, only because security groups scope is only to the VPC, guys. Okay. So security group scope is only to the VPC, and the VPC scope is only to that particular region, right? And for that particular region, you can create up to 6 VPCs based on the limit, but you can increase the limit according to how much ever you want, I believe. But now let's go ahead and create a security group. But did I create this default security group? Obviously I didn't, because when you create a VPC, you not only get a route table, you also do get a security group and also a network access control list, which we will see in the next lab that we'll do. Okay. So right now I'm going to create a new security group. I'm going to name this as So I'm going to call this as my public subnet web server SG. I'm going to have port 22 open to only my IP address, right? I'm going to go ahead and click on review and launch and click on launch. I'm going to choose a key pair. Again, key pair scope is regional. So therefore, all the key pairs can be used across this particular region for any number of resources within any number of, those resources can be residing in any VPC. So the key pair scope is regional. That's something to remember. So let's go ahead and click on launch. Okay, so the instance is in the process of launching. So let me just go ahead and filter based on this instance ID, right? So that you guys don't see the other instances. So you can see this particular instance is in the pending state. Let me just refresh and see. Okay, so we got a public IP over here. Let me just copy this public IP and open my terminal. Okay, so I'm within the downloads directory where I do have that key pair. So I'm going to type SSH EC2-user at the public IP -I. So my key pair name, which is called as akshaynv.pem. Now let's hit an enter and let's see if we are able to go ahead and connect to this EC2 instance in the public subnet. Bingo. So we are able to connect to this EC2 instance in the public subnet, but let's see if it has internet access, right? Through the internet gateway, through that custom route table, where we associated the public subnet and so on. So let's do a simple yum update -y. So it's telling you need to be root. So let's elevate our privileges to super user. So you can see it was able to go ahead and download all of these packages, right? So this is excellent because now it has internet connectivity. So it's sitting in the public subnet, it has internet connectivity. Now let's go ahead and launch another EC2 instance in the private subnet. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on launch EC2 instances. Let's choose the same Amazon Linux AMI. And let's go ahead and choose the T2 micro. But this time I'm going to place it within my VPC, which is my demo VPC NG. But right now I'm going to place it in the private subnet. I will not get a public IP, right? So let's go ahead and click on add storage. Let's leave it as 8 gigs. I'm going to add tags. I'm going to give it a name tag. So even though it's not a DB server, I'm just naming it as a DB server. So my private subnet DB server. And then let's configure the security group. So right now, let's go back to the PPT. So right now, this web server that we have created is sitting in the public subnet and he has access to the internet. But then this database server is sitting in the private subnet. It does not have access to the internet. So who can actually access this database server? The web server can access the database server because there is a local route within the VPC. Therefore, resources within the VPC across any subnets can talk to each other, right? So therefore, we are not going to directly log in from the internet to the database server. Obviously, we can't because it does not have a public IP. We will use a jump box as this web server itself as a jump box. We will go into the web server and then from the web server, we'll go into the database server, right? So let's go back to our console. So therefore, the SSH should come from the web server's subnet range, or I could just have the entire VPC subnet range over here. So this is my entire VPC subnet range, right? So I'm just going to create a new security group and call this as my private subnet DB server SG. So the reason why I restricted SSH to come only from within the VPC is because this particular EC2 instance is sitting within the private subnet and does not have internet connectivity, nor does it have any public IP for us to directly go from the internet. Otherwise, I mean, if you assign a public IP to this instance, then there is no meaning of calling it a private instance, right? Or even a private subnet, right? So let's go ahead and click on review and launch. Let's click on launch. And I'm going to use the same key pair. And I acknowledge, and I'm going to go ahead and launch. So now once I launch this EC2 instance, and it's coming to the pending status. So let me just copy this guy and let me put him over here just to filter based on this EC2 instance. So you can see over here that this EC2 instance is coming up, but then right now it does not have a public IP, does not have a public DNS, but it does have a private IP. So before going ahead and logging into this EC2 instance, what I would like to do right now is I'm just going to go ahead and open another terminal window. So you can see this is my key pair that I'm using to log into the EC2 instance and so on. So this is my key pair that I was using to log into the public subnet server. So therefore, I'm just going to copy this key pair's content. So just going to copy this key pair's content, and I'm going to go back into my public subnet server. So it's still in the process of cleanup right now. So I hope it has finished. Yeah, so it has finished. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create a key pair over here. I'm just going to use the VI editor called, and I'm going to call the file as key.pem, right? And I'm going to hit the button on my keyboard to specify it to go into the insert mode. And I'm going to paste my private key pair fingerprint over here. Okay. So I hope it's right. Yeah. So I'm going to click on escape :WQ to write and quit. Now I'm going to modify the permissions on this key pair. I'm going to do chmod 400 key.pem. So once you have modified the permissions on this key pair, now this key pair is ready to use, right? So now we can go ahead and copy the private subnets EC2 instances private IP, right? Let's go ahead and paste this guy over here. So let's do SSH EC2-user at private IP rather than the public IP, and then use -i and specify the key.pem file, which we pasted onto the public server, public subnet server. Let's click on enter. So we should be now into the database server. So now we are into the database server because it's showing only the private IP of the database server that we used to connect, right? So right now, since we are within the database server, let me just clear my screen and let's execute a command and let's see if it has internet access. So let's do. So we'll have to elevate our privileges to super user. So you can see over here, the screen will be stuck right now because it does not have any kind of internet connectivity and we haven't provisioned an NAT gateway or a NAT instance, right? So therefore, this will not work right now. So therefore, what we will do right now is we'll go back and we will cancel this, right? So it has not found out any kind of mirrors that are available. So let's go ahead and create a NAT instance right now. And let's configure this NAT instance onto the private subnets route table to ensure that we have connectivity towards the internet. So let's go ahead and click on create launch instance. And instead of using any one of these AMIs, I'm going to go to the community AMIs and I'm going to search for NAT. So we have a NAT AMI over here that can be used. So we are going to choose this NAT AMI. So always remember under the community AMIs, we have a NAT AMI over here. We are going to click on select. So we are going to do the lab for NAT instance right now. I'm going to use the T2 micro itself. Configure instance details. So where do you place the NAT instance? That is the biggest question, right? So if you're having a NAT gateway or a NAT instance, where do you place these guys? These guys should have internet connection. So these guys should have a route to the internet. If you place the NAT instance or the NAT gateway in the private subnet, obviously they will not have any kind of internet connectivity. So going back to the diagram, you have to place the NAT instance or the NAT gateway on your public subnet. So therefore, we are going to go back and we are going to choose our VPC, my demo VPC NG, and we are going to place this guy onto the public subnet. And let's go ahead and click on add storage. And we are going to leave it as it is. We are going to click on add tags. We are going to call this as our NAT instance. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and configure security groups. And I'm going to leave the security group rule for SSH to be open to only my IP address. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on review and launch. And yeah, click on next. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on launch. So let's go ahead and choose Akshay NV as my key pair. I acknowledge and click on launch. Okay, so now once this EC2 instance has come up, there is one small configuration that you'll have to do on this EC2 instance because it should not be the source or the destination of the traffic. The traffic should go through him. He should not be the source or destination of the traffic. So therefore, we will have to disable that particular setting. So I'm going to do this filter and let's see whether that in EC2 instance has come to the running status. So yeah, So this is my NAT EC2 instance that we have created as a NAT instance that is going to do the NATing process for you. So this is a previous generation. So a lot of people right now recommend going for the NAT gateway, which is a highly available solution as part of the VPC itself, which is managed by AWS. So you will have to manage your NAT instance. If suppose you don't have enough network throughput through this NAT instance, you'll have to scale this NAT instance vertically to a bigger instance size and so on. So let's go ahead and disable the source and destination check on this NAT instance to ensure that the traffic goes through it rather than the EC2 instance checking whether it's the source or destination of the traffic. So let's click on actions, instance setting, and let's go ahead and I think it should be in the networking. Yeah. So it's change source and destination check. Let's go ahead and disable this. Right. So now we will have to go back to our route tables. So going back to our route table to the main routing table that is part of the private subnet, let's add another route over here. Let's click on edit routes. Let's add a route over here. Let's say that all the traffic that goes to the internet should go through the NAT instance for the private subnet. So let's choose an instance over here and let's choose the NAT instance over here and let's click on save routes. Okay. So once we have clicked on save routes, you can see it's automatically choosing the ENI of the EC2 instance over here on the routing table. We will next replace this with the NAT gateway. So let's go to EC2 instance and let's see whether this NAT instance has come up. It's still in the initializing status. But let me just go ahead and try my yum update command that was not previously working from the private subnet instance. We are still in the private subnet instance over here. Remember, this is the private IP of that instance. It does not have a public IP. Let me just clear the screen and let me do a yum update -y command again. And let's see if it works this time. Okay, it's still not working. Let me just wait for a little bit of time. So let's give it a little bit of time. Okay, so it's not working. So let's go ahead and look at the security group of the NAT instance and let's try to modify the security group, because general point of troubleshooting is your security group. So let's click on the security group of your NAT instance, right? So let's click on the inbound rules. We have only 22 traffic, right? That's going to come from my IP address. So let's go ahead and choose and edit inbound rules, and let's also open up port HTTP and port HTTPS. So let's go ahead and open up port HTTP, right? So let's open up port HTTP and let's open up port HTTPS. Let's open up port HTTPS, and both of these can come from the VPC CIDR block range itself. So I'm going to open up the VPC CIDR block range, which is 10.0.0.0/16. Sorry, 10.0.0.0/16, right? And then we are going to go ahead and click on save rules. So once we have modified our security group of our NAT instance, let's also modify the outbound rules. So we generally have all traffic open to the outside world. I think this should pretty much suffice what we would like to target. So we have port HTTP open to the entire VPC, and port HTTPS, which is port 443, also open to the entire VPC. And then we have SSH open to our respective public IP address. So let's go back to that terminal where we have our private EC2 instance and let's do yum update -y. Brilliant. So right now we have got the private subnet instance also being patched and updated through the NAT instance, right? So let's wait for this update to complete. So in the meantime, let's do one more thing. Since we already have the NAT gateway over here, sorry, the NAT instance over here that is working, always remember that the NAT instance's security group should have port HTTP and HTTPS open from your respective VPC CIDR block range, or it could be tied down to only your private subnet's IP range. So our private subnet's IP range was 10.0.1.0/24, right? So now instead of using a NAT instance, which was the previous one wherein we have to manage everything and becomes a headache for us, let's go ahead and use something called as a NAT gateway. So let's go ahead and create a NAT gateway over here on the AWS's VPC side. So let's go ahead and create a NAT gateway. This NAT gateway is for another VPC that we had. So let's go ahead and create a new NAT gateway, and let's choose the public subnet where we have to place this NAT gateway. So this is our demo VPC NG VPC, and we are going to choose the public subnet. And when you click on allocate elastic IP address, it's going to allocate an elastic IP over here. The maximum number has been reached. Okay. So let me do one thing. Let me go to EC2 and let me deallocate some elastic IPs. So, okay. So therefore you can see only 5 elastic IPs are allowed. So there are some elastic IPs that can be released. So let me go ahead and release elastic IPs. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and click on allocate elastic IP. Cool. So now it has allocated an elastic IP for us, and let's go ahead and click on create NAT gateway. So the NAT gateway will take at least a minute or two to come up from the pending state to the available state. And in the meantime, what we could possibly do is we can go ahead and modify our route tables to, rather than in fact use the NAT gateway rather than the NAT instance. So our main routing table is where we have our private subnet association. So let's go to our routes in the main routing table, and we can see we have our NAT instance mentioned over here. Let's click on edit routes. And instead of using the NAT instance, let's remove this route and let's add a new route, and let's map it to the NAT gateway. So let's choose NAT gateway instead of instance. Let's choose NAT gateway. And then let's go ahead and choose this NAT gateway over here. And let's go ahead and click on save routes. Let's click on close. So now you can see if the NAT gateway has come up, if it has come up to the available status, then we will be able to go ahead and send out traffic. So you can see this update was complete. But then now, since we have removed that route from the internet, let's see if we are able to install something before the NAT gateway comes up. So you can see over here, the downloading packages is not working because the NAT gateway has still not come up. So it's keeping on trying mirrors, but it's not able to resolve, right? So let's wait for some time until the NAT gateway has come up. So I'm just going to clear my screen. So let's wait for some time until the NAT gateway has come up. Let me refresh. Okay, cool. So the NAT gateway has come up right now. So let's go ahead and do the same command right now. Since we already added it to the routing table that respect to route to the NAT gateway. Brilliant. Okay, so now also it's not coming. What could be the reason? What could be the reason? So now also it's saying it's failed. Let me just Control C. Let me go ahead and check my settings. So let's go ahead and probably the first thing that we would do is go ahead and remove the NAT instance. So let me go ahead and terminate this guy. Click on terminate. Yeah. So let's go to the NAT gateway. So this was the NAT gateway that we created for our VPC. Let me expand this. So yeah, this was the NAT gateway that we created. Cool. So was this the same NAT gateway that we chose within our route table? So let us just check that also. So this is the NAT gateway ID. It starts with NAT-0B. So let's go to route tables once more. And let's go to the main routing table and go to routes. So 0B. So this is the NAT gateway that we created, and that's the one that we have attached. So I think this is correct. Yep. Yeah. Routing tables, main routing table, routes. Yeah. We have 0.0.0.0/0 going to the NAT gateway. And we have associated the private subnet with the main routing table, right? Yeah. So these are correct right now. So let's go ahead and try doing that command once more. Maybe it could have taken a little bit of time. So let's just try. So now it's working. So maybe it would have just taken a little bit of time for the NAT gateway to just come up once more. So now it's working right now, and it has installed the HTTPD web server also for us. So this is how you do connectivity with private subnets and public subnets. So so just a small recap. So we created our VPC, and we had 2 availability zones. We have one availability zone mapped to one public subnet and another availability zone mapped to another subnet called as a private subnet. We launched 2 EC2 instances, one in the public subnet and one in the private subnet. And then we created 2 routing tables, but one was already created for us when we created the VPC, which was called as a main routing table. And then the other one was called as a custom routing table. So with this custom routing table, we associated the public subnet, and with the main routing table, we associated the private subnet, right? So therefore, what happened was in the custom routing table, we directly added a rule called 0.0.0.0/0 to go to the internet gateway. But with the main routing table, we added 0.0.0.0/0 to first go to our NAT instance that we created, wherein we had to manipulate the security group and so on. And then subsequently, what we did was we created our NAT gateway, which was a highly manageable, highly available managed solution from AWS. And then we, specify the NAT gateway as the target for this particular main routing table for all of the private subnet traffic, right? So now what we are going to do right now is we are also going to learn about VPC peering. So to learn about VPC peering, what we have to do is the first step is to go ahead and create a new VPC. So therefore, this time what I'm going to show you guys is instead of going ahead and creating a VPC by myself, I'm going to go ahead and use the VPC wizard to go ahead and create the VPC for us. But this time we are going to create a VPC only with a public subnet. So this is our VPC that we are going to peer. So this VPC is our source VPC. So this is the one that we are going to peer with the new VPC that we are creating. Again, within the same region, but it does not matter whether it's within the same region, within the same account, or another region within the same account, or if it's in a different account with a different region. So that does not matter when it comes to VPC peering. So the only condition that we have to satisfy over here is that we have to ensure that we don't have overlapping CIDR block addresses, right? So therefore, we are going to go to the VPC dashboard and let's go ahead and click on launch VPC wizard. And we are going to go with VPC with a single public subnet and let's click on select. And we are going to go ahead and give the VPC CIDR block address that does not overlap with our previous one. So I'm going to use the 192 range over here. So I'm going to go with the VPC CIDR block range as 192.168.0.0/24. But just for me to remember, let me just make it as /16 itself. And the VPC name I'm going to give is I'm going to call it as my demo VPC NG peering. And I'm going to give the first subnet range as 192.168.0.0/24. So this is my first subnet, right? And I'm going to prefer the availability zone as US East 1A. And I'm going to term it as the public subnet within that, within this particular VPC that we are creating, right? So we don't want any kind of service endpoints, and we are going to enable DNS host names and so on. And the tenancy is default. Let's go ahead and create the VPC. So it will create the VPC for us. It will create the internet gateway for us and so on. So let's go ahead and walk through this VPC. So let's go ahead and look at our peering VPC. Let's go ahead and filter based on this guy. So we have our peering VPC over here. So this peering VPC has subnets. So it has created only one subnet for this peering VPC, right? It's created only one public subnet. And you can see over here, the auto assign public IP is still no. So let me go ahead and modify that. So let me modify auto assign IP settings. Let me make it enabled for this peering VPC, right? So now it's in the enable status. Let's see if it has created an internet gateway. So let's go ahead and filter based on this VPC. Yeah, it has created an internet gateway for our peering VPC also. So you can see over here the data over here called as the peering VPC, right? So let us also see if it has created a routing table for us for the peering VPC. Yes, it has created two routing tables. One that was created when the VPC was created. The other one was created through the VPC wizard, which was called as a custom routing table, where we already have the public subnet associated over here. So let me just expand this. It's not allowing to expand. Okay. But anyways, we can also see the route over here also going to the internet gateway added. So that's how easy it is to create a VPC through the VPC wizard, because it creates everything for us. So the next step that we are going to do is we are going to launch an EC2 instance into this particular VPC, right? And we already have two EC2 instances residing in our previous VPC within the public subnet and one in the private subnet. So over here, we are going to launch only one instance into this particular VPC. So let me go ahead and launch an instance. Let me choose the Amazon Linux AMI. And let me go ahead and choose the T2 Micro. And we are going to launch this EC2 instance into the peering VPC, right? And we are going to put it into only one subnet that is available. And therefore, the subnet settings for the auto assign public IP is enabled, right? So let me go ahead and add storage. Same storage. Let me add tags. So now let me call this as my demo VPC NG peering instance. And let me go ahead and configure the security group for this guy. So we don't have any security group over here because the security groups are scoped only to the VPC. And this is the new VPC that we created. So let me create a new security group. And over here, I'm going to specify port 22 to come from only my IP right now, right? Let's go ahead and review and launch. But instead, let's do one modification over here. And because anyways, we are going to come back to the screen and do the modification. So let's do one thing. Let's not keep the source IP address to come from my IP. Instead, once we peer these VPCs, the instances within these VPCs can talk to each other, right? So why not let's do something like this. So let's put the 10 dot network as a source. Remember that this VPC is the 192.168 VPC, right? And if we specify the SSH traffic to come only from the 10 dot network, that's brilliant, right? So when we specify the traffic can come from the 10 dot network, that means all the traffic resides only within the Amazon's backbone network when you do VPC peering. So it's only private traffic that comes. So since this particular network that we are creating, this EC2 instance that we are creating is sitting within the 192.16 network, we are going to ensure that all of the SSH traffic can come from the other VPC that we have previously created, which is the 10 dot network. Let's go ahead and click on review and launch. Let's click on launch. And I'm going to choose my same key pair and I'm going to acknowledge, click on launch. So key pairs are regional, so therefore you can use it across VPCs, irrespective of whichever region. Irrespective of how many VPCs are there within that region, right? So therefore, let me just copy this peering instance. Let me just call it as 1 sec. So okay, let me just do my NC in the filter whether all the three come up. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we have one public subnet server that is residing within our 10 dot network VPC, and one private subnet server DB server that we are already logged in that is sitting in the 10 dot network again. But this peering instance alone is sitting within the 192 dot network, right? So let this peering instance come up. In the meantime, let me configure the peering connection between these guys, right? So going back to the VPC's dashboard, so there is one thing called as peering connections over here, one configuration over here. So let's go ahead and click on peering connections. So let me go ahead and click on another peering connection over here. And now what I have to do is give the peering connection a name. Sorry. So I'm calling it as my demo VPC NG and my demo VPC NG peering, the two VPC names. So I'm going to go with the requester VPC being the my demo VPC NG, which is the 10 dot network. And the acceptor to be in the same account in the same region. But you can see over here, we can go with another account, another region, or same account, another region, or another account, same region. Either way is possible. So we are going to go with my account, my region. So I am going to go with the peering VPC. So you can see over here, this is a 10 dot network. I'm peering it with the 192 dot network. So let's create the peering connection. So once you have created the peering connection, someone has to go ahead and accept the peering connection. So since I'm the owner of the same AWS account, I'm going to go ahead and click on actions and click on accept request and click on yes, accept. So now the peering connection is active. So once the peering connection is active, the next step that you'll have to do is go ahead and modify the routing tables on both the VPCs. So let's go to route tables. So you can see this is the routing table that was created for the peering route. So let me just go ahead and click on the peering VPC over here. Let me just copy this VPC, which is the 192 dot network, right? Let's go to its respective route table. So let me just filter based on that. Right, so you can see these two route tables. So for both of these route tables, or essentially for the public route table where the subnet is associated, right? So for this custom route table, I'm going to go to routes. I'm going to add another route over here specifying the source can be 10 dot network, and the target can be the peering connection. And I'm going to choose this peering connection and click on save. Similarly, I have to go to that respective routing table, right, of that respective VPC, which was our my demo VPC NG. So I have to just copy this particular VPC ID. Let me go back to route tables again. So let me filter based on this my demo VPC. So over here we have a main route table and a custom route table that we created. So for both these route tables, we have subnets associated. So for both of them, I'm going to add the peering connection. So I'm going to specify the 192 dot network over here, the reverse, right? I'm going to put it to the peering connection. And this is a peering connection. Click on save. So this is the same thing that we'll have to actually do for the custom route table also. So let's click on edit. Let's click on add route. Let's do the 192.168. Sorry, 192.168.0.0. Yeah. Let's choose a peering connection. And let's choose this peering connection. Click on save. Right. Cool. So now since we have the peering connection for both, right, and we have established the peering connection, we have added the route table. So just a small recap. So for this my demo VPC, which is the 10 dot network, we are adding the opposite network, which is the other VPC that we have paired this with, which is called as a peering VPC. And then we have the 192.168 network mentioned over here in the route table. And even for the main route table of the my demo VPC NG itself, we have the 192.168 mentioned over here. But if suppose we go to the peering VPC route table, I'll just copy this VPC ID and we'll go to the peering VPC route table ID. So you can see over here in your custom route table, we have a route that goes okay, so over here we have the public subnet. Okay, so we added it to the main route table, right? Sorry, we will also have to add it to the custom route table. So let's add it to the custom route table also. So we'll add 10.0.0.0 over here, which is the opposite network going through the peering connection. It's just the opposite configuration that you'll have to do. So once you click on save routes over here, since the peering connection is established, let me go back to the instances and let me go ahead and mention that we are still within the DB server instance, right? So we are still within the DB server instance that is sitting within this particular instance. So this is sitting within the 10 network. And what we are going to try is from this private server DB instance, we are going to connect to this particular peering instance that is residing in a totally different VPC, which is the 192.vpc. And we are going to try to connect to it through its public IP or its private IP. Either way is fine, because since it's VPC peering, all traffic can be private since we have mentioned VPC peering, right? So let's use the private IP itself and try to connect. So since we already have the key pair, let's try SSH EC2-user at private IP. So right now we are within the database server, and then we are going into the this server that we provisioned within another network, right? Which is a 192.1 network. And let's put our key.pem file. Yeah. Let's see, where is that key.pem file? So let me just do an ls and see whether we have the key.pem. Just do an ls. Yeah. So we don't have the key.pem file in our database server. So what we will possibly do is let's just go ahead and copy the same content and let's paste it within the database server. So let's do vi key.pem on the database server. Right. Let's click on I. Let's click on Control V. Yeah. Let's save it. Let's do chmod on this file to ensure that we will be able to use it. Right. And now let's do the SSH EC2-user command. And let me just copy the private IP of the peering instance, which is the 192.network instance, right? And let's paste it over here and let's do -i key.pem. Now let's see if we are able to, connect to this instance, which is sitting in a totally different network within another subnet. Right? If we are able to connect, it's brilliant. We are able to connect using its private IP. So what we did was, let me show this process once more. So let me just exit from this guy and exit from this guy and exit from this guy, right? So now I'm back to my laptop, right? Okay, it's one more exit I'll have to do. Okay, cool. So now I'm back to my laptop. So let me do the connection once more and show you. So now what we are going to do is we are going to jump into our public subnet server, web server that is residing within one VPC, right? So we are going to use this public IP, right? So we're going to do SSH EC2-user at public IP, and I'm going to specify my key pair, which is akshaynv.pem. So I'm within my public subnet server, and from this public subnet server, I'm going to go into my database subnet server, right? Which is the DB server over here. It only has a private IP because it's sitting within the private subnet, doesn't have a public IP. So this was the first lab that we did. So we are going to SSH EC2-user at private IP -i, the key.pem file that we placed over there within this directory. So we are going to connect to this particular server. So it's saying permission denied. So let's do sudo su, and then let's see. Let's try the same command with root privileges, because we used the root privileges before to do this command. Yeah. So now we are within the private subnet database server, right? So now from this private subnet database server, we are trying to connect to our peering instance using its private IP, which is totally residing in a different network. So let's do EC2-user, sorry, SSH at the start, SSH EC2-user at private IP -i key.pem that already resides. So now you may also get that same error, right? Because we'll have to elevate our privileges to super user and then execute that command, right? Cool. So you can see over here, we are right now within that 192.168 instance. So we went into the public subnet. Then from the public subnet, we jumped into the private subnet instance, which was our database server within one network. So these two guys are in the same network. But then we then jumped into another network using the concept of VPC peering, right? So what happens if I directly talk from this particular web server itself to this database server? So let's just check that out also. All the servers within both the networks should be able to talk to each other using its private IP ranges itself, right? So let me just exit back to my laptop, right? So let me do one more exit. Yep, I'm back to my laptop. So let's try one more thing. So let's try connecting to the public subnet server first. So let's try connecting to the public subnet server first, right? So I'm doing SSH EC2-user at public IP -I akshaynv.pem, right? So we are within the public subnet server, right? And let me elevate my privileges to super user. So from the public subnet server within one network, will I be able to directly talk to my peering instance? So since both of these guys, the public subnet server and the database server, are in the same network, I need not even go into this guy to even talk to this guy. So even if the public subnet server wants to talk to this particular peering instance that is sitting in a totally different network through its private IP, it will still be able to. So let's do SSH EC2-user at the private IP, right? -I key.pem. So let's try to connect. Brilliant. So even we are able to connect from the web server instance directly to another network's EC2 instance. So these are the concepts that you'll have to remember going into the exam. That I mean, you'll have to remember what VPCs are. You have to remember what subnets are, and then you'll have to remember about route tables. You have to remember regarding which type of gateway you're going to use. So for the public subnet, servers to directly talk to the internet, you can use the internet gateway, and internet gateway is one of the prerequisites that you'll have to create in order to create the NAT gateway, right? So the NAT gateway is something that allows you access for your private subnet instances to go to the internet. And we also saw the lab regarding how do you provision a NAT instance too. And then finally, we also saw about peering connections, right? With peering connections, we saw that we could create a peering connection between two VPCs, right? So this was the peering connection that we created. So let me just filter based on this guy. So this was a peering connection that we created between the 10 dot network and the 192.168 network. So the steps for creating the peering connection is first create the peering connection, then go ahead and modify your route tables accordingly. So you will have to modify your, I'm not sure which VPC this route table is part of, but then let me expand this. Yep. So you have to modify your main route table for one of your VPCs to point to the other respective VPC. So this is a 10 network VPC's route table. You have to ensure that it points to the other network through the peering connection. And even your custom route table, which you created for the 10 network, should also have that route to talk to the through the peering connection to the 192.168 network. And your other routing tables that you add over here, which was the 192.168 networks routing table, it should have the reverse, which is to talk to the 10 network through the peering connection. And this was the main route table, right? Yeah, the main route table for the 192.168 network. Over here also you added another route that goes through, so to the 10 network through the peering connection. So the reverse have to be added. And then one more thing that you'll have to think in your mind is, for the peering instance, the people who talk to the peering instance, right? So the people who talk to the peering instance should also have configured the security group to ensure that the traffic for port 22 can come only from the 10 network, right? So similarly, if suppose this instance right now, so if we go to instances back again, so if your peering instance right now, so if your peering instance right now tries to talk to your public subnet instance, which is the reverse, right? Does this public subnet instance have a security group that says all traffic can come from 192.168 network? It doesn't have, right? So let me just copy the private IP of this guy and let me try. So since we are already within the, the instance, which is your 192.168 network instance. So sorry, sudo su, right? Let me clear the screen. So let us create the file with the same key pair over here also. So let us use the same key pair across. So I'm just going to create the key.pem file. Paste the content, escape, write and quit. Okay. So let's modify the permissions on this file. So this is my 192.168 network. So chmod 400 key.pem, right? So once you have modified this, let's go ahead and try to do a reverse connection from this instance, right? Let's do a reverse connection, EC2-user, from the 192 network to the 10 network. So, oops, very sorry. Let's clear the screen. Forgot that I had that copied. So let's do SSH EC2-user at, let me go back and copy the private IP of the 10 network instance, right? So let me paste that over here. And let's do -i key.pem. So you can see over here that the traffic is not going through. It's just stuck over there, right? It's not going through. The only reason is because you don't have the security group configured on your public subnet web server or your database server, right? To allow traffic from the 192 network, right? So you can see over here, we have the SSH traffic to come only from my public IP. Let me add one more inbound rule over here. Let me add a new rule called SSH, right? But this time I'm going to specify that it should come from the 192.network. So 192.168. So sorry, 192.168.1.0. So 192.168.0.0/16. Yeah. So let's go ahead and click on save. So now if I try the same command, it should go through. Brilliant. So now even the reverse is possible, right? So you're coming from the 192 network back to the 10 network. And then you can just keep playing around, just keep testing it out. So for always remember, for peering connections, the way that you do it is you create the peering connection, you establish it properly. And once you have created the peering connection, modify your route tables accordingly to ensure that the route table for your source VPC has the peering connection with the source being with the destination being the destination VPC CIDR block address, and your VPC-B, which is your destination VPC, to have the source VPC CIDR block address through the peering connection. So the opposites have to be configured, right? And then all you have to do is do the same opposites configuration on your security group also. So for your security group right now, you can see when you go back to instances, you can see that my peering instance has a security group wherein I have the 10 network as the source for my SSH traffic. And for my public subnet web server that is sitting in my first VPC that we created in the lab, we have the inbound rules to be port 22 to come from the new VPC that we created through the VPC wizard, which is the 192.168, right? So the opposites have to be configured everywhere so that you will get access for VPC peering for all of your instances across your VPCs to talk through private IP ranges. Okay. So this was a pretty long lab and a pretty long lecture. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. So I'll see you in the next lab where we will discuss more advanced configurations regarding VPCs, exclusively regarding the VPC endpoints and so on. Okay. So one more note regarding egress only internet gateway. Before wrapping up the lecture, it's not that complex. So instead of using a NAT gateway for IPv4 traffic, for IPv6 traffic, you have to use an egress only internet gateway. It's pretty simple. So that's one thing that you'll have to remember going into the exam. So for IPv6 traffic, for private subnet instances to talk to the internet, always remember private subnet instances to talk to the internet, you will have to use egress only internet gateway for IPv6, right? And we never spoke about modifying our network access control lists and so on. We will look at this in the next lab. And for the associate level exam, you may not need to learn about configuring VPN settings or transit gateways or traffic mirroring. So this would be more than enough for you to understand for the associate level exam. But then for professional exams, you will have to remember VPN connections and establish VPN connections and so on. Okay. So thank you for attending this session. I'll open up for questions. Thank you.